Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's episode, I just want to talk about what happens when you actually don't say the things that you really should say and the things that you actually want to say. One thing that's been on my mind a lot lately is answering the question to Langston Hughes' infamous poem. Well, it's not really infamous, it's actually pretty famous and it's well known. If you don't know, it's the Harlem poem, Dreams Deferred, right? He poses the question, what happens to the dreams deferred? And I've just been wanting to know what is the answer to this question. And so I found myself reading Overcoming Life's Disappointments, and this is by Harold Kushner. And this book really inspires me because it talks about all of the complexities of life that lead to very unique paths, right? A lot of times we find ourselves in spaces where we're judging others. I think it's easy, especially when you're younger, right? You look at people who are homeless or people who are impoverished and you think, oh, if they would have only went to college, they would have been on the other side of the, tracks. Like, we look at people who have addictions and just all of these the word is honestly failing me, so we're not going to make it complicated, but people who have shortcomings that are very evident, right? And we just make general assumptions and we assume that it's a very simple thing, right? Whenever you talk to people and you're like, man, I always wanted to do this, and someone comes and they have a little bit of what we may consider a rebuttal, we're like, oh, well, you just don't have the courage, or you're just, but it's like we never really stop to really listen and think, right? You hear people saying things like, oh, well, yeah, you should have just did that. I remember one of my senior editors, when I was working at the Cities magazine, I asked him why he didn't go to New York Times, why didn't he go to the New York Times? And he said he ended up having a family. And at the time in my mind, I was like, oh, he probably just, he probably just didn't try. I'm like, oh man, look, there's so many opportunities out there, right? And it's like when you're young, you kind of have that type of perspective when you think that just everything in life is just so cookie cutter, cut and dry and simplistic. And so I really wanted to pose the question, what happens when we, the dream deferred? I'm still figuring that part out. I think from what I found from this book, it just kind of becomes another dream. And I think that it takes a lot of courage to actually be someone who dreams again and who dreams a different dream, especially when you start talking about the very unrealistic dreams that America gives us, and how a lot of times, because something is in proxy, you kind of think that it's just a very straight and narrow path to get there, which is not to be cynical, but it's more so just to say that life is a little bit more complex, and no one's path is straightforward, although I think we're fed ideals concerning a very straight and narrow path just our entire lives. I mean, it's through propaganda. So I think that that's very interesting. But I thought about what happens when we don't say the things that we should say, and what made me think about this was obviously being someone who is kind of in this space where it's journalism, public speaking, I love reading, I love talking and sharing my perspectives and my unique insights. And what happens when you don't say what you should say? And I think a lot of times, especially today, we're kind of told that, we shouldn't say this, we shouldn't say that, especially being in this culture that is just hypersensitive. And that a lot of people are online, there are opinions. A lot of people feel like opinions don't hold weight, which I would have to disagree. I think that there are some very valid opinions. And sometimes, an opinion could be a general statement, but a lot of times, it's through observation. So, technically it's kind of factual, it's not something that everyone has experienced, but, it's definitely not just solely based on somebody's unique perspective. A lot of times there's a lot of fact to back up opinions. So actually, I do think opinions matter, and people are actually getting paid to talk. So I no longer think talk is cheap, but yeah, I just wonder, what happens when we don't say the things that we should say? I found myself being in very interesting places where when I do say the thing, it's actually met very well. And it's not really a matter of external validation. It's just more so who needed to hear that message. And so I think what happens to the dream that is deferred, I think it becomes a new dream, right? I think it becomes a new dream, and I think it's on the dreamer to dream again and to, maybe come to terms with grievance and realize that maybe this wasn't the dream. Maybe this wasn't the thing that I was called to do. I actually think that the things that you're called to do never really leave you, I don't think that they leave you. I don't even think you can escape it, right? I think that there's something about being passionate about a thing, but there's also something about the restlessness of a calling that I just don't think you can escape. And I think you'll know when there's just like something you're really passionate about and it's a dream, because it can be deferred and you can dream again. But I think when you start talking about like your calling and your passions, I believe that is something that it will never leave you. That actually, you can't be detoured from that. You know what I mean? Like if you were to be detoured from that, you will literally, your life will probably never be the same. And I think you will always have that. It's not even really like a negging, because I think sometimes, we have, external voices and people's opinions and their expectations, and then that kind of weighs on you a little bit. But I think when it's your calling, when it's something it's really your dream, it's on the inside of you. And when you think about every dreamer who's ever did anything, right? Every visionary, every person who's been called to do a thing, and it's a really, really big thing, right? Hence, we have these dreams and they're very aspirational, and that's what we really want. We want this big thing. But I think that the way that we go about it is more so just, it's like marketing, it's like it's propagated, it's cultivated in such a way that's very unrealistic. And I think that's actually what leads people astray. It's not the dream itself. It's not that, that wasn't your dream per se. It's just more so like anybody who's ever done anything great has actually traveled on a journey. And like, you don't really know until you get there, and even still, it's like, I don't know, I'm not there yet. But I do think that it's a little different versus when you obtain a dream that wasn't ever really yours. It's like a lack of fulfillment. It's like an empty box that I think comes from that, versus when it's your thing and it's your journey and it's something that, was really meant for you. I don't know. It just feels right. It's a little bit different. I think it's a more so a matter of fulfillment rather than like accomplishment, because you're going to obtain a thing. And then like, once you get the thing, it's like, okay, you're not really into the thing anymore. You're looking for the next thing. But I think once you, get to your destination, and it's like purposeful and you're in alignment and you achieve the thing or you reach the thing, then there's a feeling of fulfillment that comes from that. You actually no longer have a desire to obtain more of, so I think that's the difference. And so I think, what happens to the dream deferred, it becomes a different dream. And I think you just have to act like, I think, you may say like you want to be a this or you want to be that, but it's like if it's deferred and you are at peace with that, or maybe you have feelings of grievance because a lot of people are putting expectations on you, people you may have known, and they're like, oh, didn't you say you wanted to do this or do that, and it's like there's that. And then you have your days, but it's like you ultimately get over it, and then you kind of reflect and you're like, that was a little outlandish. That was like a bit unrealistic for me to have that specific dream in that time. You know what I mean? I think when it's the world's dream, or when it's other people's expectations, it comes with like a timeline. But I think when it's your thing and it's the thing you're destined to do, it's just a journey. It's you. It's in you. It's like your internal compass, and I think God will guide you to that. So yeah.